life is about a very difficult journey. But it's those difficulties that make it very interesting, very exciting. If you had smooth sailing all the way, I think life would be very boring. But it's those challenges and overcoming those challenges that gives you a sense of confidence to move on. So my advice to young people is don't give up. Life and entrepreneurship is about failures, but learn from these failures, because failing is a big experience, big learning. Makes you stronger, it makes you very confident when you actually overcome that failure. Yes, it is very demoralizing and demotivating if you keep failing. And if you keep making the same mistakes over and over again, then there's something radically wrong. But by failing and picking yourself up and then succeeding, believe me that failure is a big, big victory in itself. And I've done it and I've learnt it all the way. I've had many, many failures along the way. But it's those failures that have made me very strong, because every time I've picked myself up and then succeeded, it's those failures I remember which have really made me very strong.
So that by the time I was sitting where you guys are today with my CS degree, I had offers from 3 technology companies to go work for them as a programmer, but I decided instead that what I would do is move to Chicago, try to get into the improv comedy group Second City, and go on from there to Saturday Night Live and Ultimate Fame and Glory. In the real world story of what happened when I decided to make a big bet on myself and take the chance to do this because it's what I loved, I was grinding away for a long time and I had no money, and we would rehearse during the day and perform in these little theaters at night for free. And I was taking classes during the day at Second City as well, trying to learn improvisation. And I eventually had to get odd jobs because I had no money, so I put my CS degree from Michigan to use wrapping flatware and selling play settings at Crate and Barrel. But while I kept on improvising in Chicago for many years, I want to tell you 2 lessons I learned in that very first year there, learning at Second City. The first one was, we had this director at Second City who was instructing a class I was in named Don DePaulo. And there were 4 people up on stage, there were about 10 of us in the class, and these guys are improvising that they're in a laundromat. And the scene ends, and Don asks all of us in the room, what do you see up there on that stage right now? And there was nothing up there, so we describe what we see up on the stage. It's an empty stage. And Don says, so far today, you guys have improvised that you're in an apartment, a laundromat, and an apartment. What are you afraid of? We all kind of looked at each other like, what do you mean, what are we afraid of? And he said, you need to make more courageous choices. The reason the stage is completely empty and doesn't have a set on it is so that you can go out there and be in the Keebler-Elf factory or be on the space shuttle as an astronaut who's never even tried to fly a plane before. Make bigger choices, take courageous risks. If there's ever an example of the importance of making bold bets and focusing on what you love, it's Twitter. When Twitter co-founder Jack Dorsey talks about the origins of his thinking for the product, he talks about his fascination with maps. He talks about his ultimate fascination with dispatch systems as he studied maps and the more efficient way of getting things like taxis and ambulances to where they needed to go more quickly. And when he sent out his first tweet, just setting up my Twitter, he didn't plan for President Obama to declare victory on that platform in the 2012 election. You cannot draw that path looking forward. You cannot draw any of your paths looking forward. So you have to figure out what you love to do, what you have conviction about, and go do that. Here's the challenge. So far, you guys have gotten where you are by meeting and exceeding expectations. You are awesome. You have excelled. Look at you. You look like an amazing giant choir. But from here on out, you have to switch gears. You're no longer meeting and exceeding expectations. There are no expectations. There's no script. When you're doing what you love to do, you become resilient because that's the habit you create for yourself. You create a habit of taking chances on yourself and making bold choices in service to doing what you love. If, on the other hand, you do what you think is expected of you or what you're supposed to do, and things go poorly or chaos ensues, as it surely will, you will look to external sources for what to do next because that will be the habit you've created for yourself. You'll be standing there frozen on the stage of your own life.
I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was, spending all of the money my parents had saved their entire life. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting. It wasn't all romantic. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with. And I would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you one example. Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me. And we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on that calligraphy class, and personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
I think the only thing that I would say is do what you do best, which is be bold, be innovative, be risk takers. And I think that in this particular moment, it's real. I mean, in Silicon Valley, everybody talks about it being a constant renaissance. But I think at this point, with the number of trends at play, the amount of opportunity and value creation there is, this is a great time to be an entrepreneur. And it's a great time for us as companies that can enable entrepreneurs to reach their goals. And so I would say be bold.